Come on, girl, let's scream.
I am a god.
No, please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel. This is the part where you run.
Come on, scream.
Hello, and welcome to Let's Scream, a podcast where we dive into our favorite horror movies. I'm Stevie.
And I'm Parker.
And today we're looking at 1973's The Wicker Man, directed by Robin Hardy.
Join us as we journey to Summerisle and learn all about The Wicker Man.
Girl, are you ready to scream?
Oh, I'm ready to scream.
I'm also ready to sing.
Are you ready to sing, girl? Because it's a musical.
It's a musical.
Yeah. And it's a musical. All right. Oh.
All right, girl, let's scream.
Let's scream.
Yeah. It's
Okay,
The
so
Wicker
The
Man.
Wicker Man. I really like this movie.
Yeah, this was the first
And
time I watched it.
You know
and
what?
I really liked it.
I don't think it's just running from the because anything was going to be better than last week for me.
Oh, you hated last week's episode. Go watch our episode of The Strangers.
Yes. And
if you want to hear a real
honest,
great take, honestly.
really honest opinion.
Really funny
I listened to
opinion.
that one, and it was a good episode.
You were like, wow, I really popped off.
I was like, wow. And I had more to say, to myself listening to the podcast. Re-talking with myself. I was like, oh my God, wait.
You're like, no, I really hated it.
Wait. This movie was even worse. And just to go into that, before we get into The Wicker Man, the first part, or the chapter 1 came out.
It's getting bad reviews.
Bad reviews, and apparently it is basically the exact same as the very first movie.
I knew it. I saw that trailer and I thought this looks like the same shit.
Maybe we'll see it. Maybe we won't. I probably won't. I don't give a shit about The Strangers.
I'll check it out just to be say that I've done it.
You've watched it.
That I've watched it. But we're not talking about The Strangers
No, we're
today.
talking about The Wicker Man.
And we're not talking about the Nicolas Cage remake.
No. Because that is not a musical.
And it's a musical! Sorry, every time the word musical comes up.
You're gonna say that stupid meme.
It's that, okay, so you haven't seen it, y'all. I'm gonna edit it in right here because it is Patti LuPone with the whitest eyes I've ever seen on the red carpet somewhere going, and it's a musical! Ah!
Yeah. And it's a musical. All right. Oh.
And that's immediately what I think of when I started watching this movie. Because, this was the first time that I have seen The Wicker Man. I until you, brought it up as, a potential watch for this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know there was an original. I thought it was just that shitty Nick Cage
You thought that's
one.
what I'd recommended.
Yeah, I was like, oh, is that the Nicolas Cage? And you were like, no.
Please, no. Anything but that. Baby, no.
And I did look up, there's a great scene where they pour bees on him, and he goes, not the bees! Not the bees!
Wait. Maybe we should.
Maybe we should. I was like, oh, wait. This is, maybe so bad it's, flips on itself, and it is instantly iconic.
It's amazing.
But this original Wicker Man, this movie was great.
It's so much.
Really liked it the first time. But then I realized I was watching a cut of it that has some crucial parts taken out of it. And I was so mad because
I watched it on YouTube, and I think that's the full cut.
the one that you can rent on YouTube?
Yes, I had to rent it. Because I will say at this point, I just got to that point where I just rent movies. I don't trust it. If I can't find it on streaming, I just rent it. I know it was on Tubi, I think, but I didn't watch it.
I watched it on Tubi, and there's a part, so I went back because I thought it was cute. I was like, oh, this was really fun. I didn't realize it was a musical, and it's a musical.
It's a musical?
Yeah. And it's a musical.
And I was like, okay. Then we had to, when we do podcast notes, I never want to watch a movie while taking notes if it's the first time I'm seeing it. I want to absorb the movie. Mm-hmm. I want to process it and form an opinion. I don't want to be sitting there just typing notes. So I had to go back, watch it a second time for my notes, and I watched the final cut. And it sold me. I was like, no, this is just great. Like, it's not
so
only
good.
just good, it is great.
It's so great, especially when it is one of those when you rewatch it, you're like, wait.
Yeah, because
catch on. Everything is
twist
everything
reframes it.
Every conversation is like basically like giving him hints.
Yeah.
Like, and it's, I think the moral of this movie is mind your business.
Kinda. Yeah. I think that's definitely like a very
That's what I took from
prominent
this.
theme here.
That's what I took from this.
Mind your
Just take
business.
one thing from
Mind
this.
your business, bitch.
I didn't watch or listen to that song. I don't think I've ever fully listened to that song.
Man your bee, man your bee, man your bee. Man your bee. Man your bee, man your bee. Never listen to Mind Your Bee?
No, yeah, sorry, Brittany. Love you, Brittany.
Mind your business, bitch.
But yeah, really classic movie. Acting is amazing. The music was great. The directing, I mean, I could go on and on. This was really fun.
Yeah.
And I think it has some really poignant themes. Religion is a big one. That's kind of what I got out of it, which we'll get into. But I thought that it was really clever, and I understand why it's like so well beloved.
Yeah.
Like, and
It's considered one of the like greatest British films of all time.
and it's funny because no one knows about it here. I feel like I don't know. My uncle Gary is from London, and on Mother's Day, we were talking about, because my Aunt Chris was there. Shout out to Aunt Chris, who was in last week's episode. And we were talking about what we were doing next week, and I said The Wicker Man, and no one knew what it was except for my Uncle Gary. He was like, oh yeah, The Wicker Man.
Of course!
Of course!
One of the greats!
And he was like, Edward Woodward. Love him. Edward Woodward.
And you were like, boy.
Roy. And I love my Uncle Gary. He cracks me up. But I was like, okay, yeah, so this really is like a huge British phenomenon, and this movie is very British, like innately in tone. But I totally got it. Look, I thought it was great.
Brits aren't hard to understand, no offense.
Well, their accents are.
Yeah. Captions.
Definitely watch this with captions, because there were a lot of accents going on. And you can also read like the lyrics of the songs,
Which are very
informative. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
This movie, everything is very well done. I think it's just another, like, I kind of like compare it to like how I felt about Carrie. It was like everything was very like well done. Like,
I think it's those 70s movies.
Yeah, this is
just
another
such a
70s
great
one that
era.
I just really love.
It's been my favorite era to re-explore so far for this podcast. It's really made me appreciate 70s.
They're so artsy, and like just like I felt like this one was very well, like the music and the score was well done.
Yeah,
so
I'm
definitely
excited.
Recommend it.
I'm excited to get into it. So, first of all, I'll give a little backstory on.
It's based off a book,
based off of a book,
which it's called The Ritual.
Yes, the book is called The Ritual.
I studied that.
You are so good.
I read up on this.
You are the Gail
I read the
Weathers.
Wikipedia page.
Oh my god, Gail Weathers could never.
I did research.
I
looked for evidence.
I looked for evidence.
Sure.
So the whole thing about this movie is that it was kind of a nightmare to release, and basically it was a love project. The director was not paid. Christopher Lee, who's like a legendary actor, was not paid for this role.
Oh my God.
He was very involved in the promotion, because he was a huge name.
Yeah.
And the production company took over kind of right after they made the movie, and the new people in charge watched the movie and were like, oh, we're not comfortable with this. This doesn't represent like the brand that we want, because there's a lot of nudity in the movie. Yeah. It's a very out there
It's
movie.
very like sexual, like freedom film, which
Yes,
I mean in
it
the
is.
70s makes sense.
Especially in England in the 70s.
Yeah.
Like all everything that was going on, they were just, very just trying.
Free love.
Yeah. And there was a huge reaction of people who were like, oh, this is the end of civilization as we know it. Like, that kind of thing. But so because of that, the theatrical release was snipped down a lot, so that's the version I watched.
Oh, so you didn't see, like, all the nudity and stuff?
No, I watched the nudity. It's weird because, like,
Oh.
the things they cut, like, were weird. I don't know. They cut out one scene we'll get to that, like, totally, like, reframed the way I saw a certain character and made me love the movie a lot more in the final cut version.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, why was this not in the theatrical release? Doesn't make any sense.
I am 99% sure that's what I watched on YouTube. I think it
Probably.
Says, I think it says
if
it's
there's
like the full...
if there's a certain scene we'll get to, then you watch the final cut.
Yeah.
From my, like, research or whatever.
Yeah, because I think it's a full film.
Then or final cut. If it says final cut, then that's the version that I would recommend watching. Which, again, we will get into, because I don't want to get into spoilers quite yet. But, yeah, so this was, like, a labor of love. The studio, like, didn't want to market it, and they didn't know how to market it, because, yeah, it's, like, got horror elements in it, but it's really not that scary. It's more, like, mystical, and there's more of a thriller, I guess. I don't know.
Mystery.
Very mystery vibes. Also, it's a musical, like...
Yeah. And it's a musical.
So they were just like, we'll just market it as a horror movie. And Christopher Lee had to, like, himself go out and talk to journalists and film critics that he was friends with. And him and Robin Hardy, the director, went out and went on basically, like, a tour in order to promote this movie.
Yeah.
So, like, barely anyone saw this movie when it came out because it was so poorly marketed. But from word of mouth, people just really liked the movie that saw it and just shared it. And that's how it's become this, like, huge cult classic, pretty much.
I mean, it's great. I think it holds up. And, like, watching it, I'm like... I mean, it's very similar to Midsummer.
I think it's definitely what inspired Midsummer.
Yeah.
Or Midsommar, or however the fuck you say that. I've heard it said
Midsommar.
both ways. Let us know if you want to do that movie,
Yeah.
listeners, because I really like that movie. I'd love to cover it.
It's a good one. I mean, there's obvious, like, differences, and it's a very
it's its own thing, but, like, definitely you can see how Midsummer is a love letter to this movie.
Yes.
This is kind of the blueprint for that. I guess they call it folk horror, that, like, subgenre.
Yes.
This was the first folk
Yes.
horror. Yeah. So, yeah. And then the studio made it, like, not-available for a really long time. That's another thing that, like, kept this from gaining traction to a lot of people. Home video was, like, really good for its audience, and made a bigger splash, I guess. It's always interesting to me learning about the history of how movies are released and marketed, and how that can affect the success of the movie. You know, it's crazy how much of a profound impact that can have. But thank God that they campaigned it so hard, Christopher Lee was like, "This is my favorite character I've ever played, and this is my favorite project I've worked on." So he didn't want to let it die.
It's so good.
So, yeah, I just wanted to give that little backstory and why there's, like, different cuts and stuff. So, but definitely don't spoil this movie. If you've never seen The Wicker Man, this is the part in the podcast where we asked you to go and watch the movie and come back and then get into the storyline with us, because this one's got some fun surprises and you won't want to miss it. So, with that all being said, are you ready to scream, girl?
Yes. Let's scream.
Are you sure, bitch? Are you ready to sing?
I'm ready to sing.
I'm ready to sing because it's a musical.
It's a musical.
Yeah. And it's a musical. All right.
It starts with this title card that says thank you to Lord Summerisle for letting us film on the island and letting us view your, like, customs and stuff. And I thought this was weird. I was like, I think this was supposed to be like a Texas Chainsaw, like, oh, this is based on true events kind of fake out thing. But I don't know, it just confused me the first time. The second time I was like, oh yeah, okay, I see where. But when you're watching it, you're like, this isn't real. Like, I know this isn't based on anything real.
I'm like, okay, I don't really get the point of that.
And this might be the earliest movie that we've covered that to actually do that, because this is 1 year before Texas Chainsaw. Yeah. So it is a cliche at this point, so I'm not gonna, you know, hold it against this movie at all. But I agree with you. That's a cliche I'm tired of seeing.
But I just don't get it for this film.
Yeah, it
just
didn't
doesn't
make sense
fit for
in
this
the
film. Because
framework
it's not
of
like a
this.
documentary style.
No.
Like,
Okay. Weird, right? But anyway.
so ignore that, in my personal opinion.
Yeah. Just
Continuity.
pretend that didn't happen. Yeah. It was a butterfly. It was a butterfly. We open on Edward Woodward. He is, try saying that 3 times fast.
Edward Woodward. Fuck. I can't even say it one time fast.
You have to say it like my Uncle Gary. Edward Woodward.
Edward Woodward. I can't do it.
Edward Woodward. Bubble wubble.
Oh, Squidward.
Woodward. And yeah, he's playing a character called Sergeant Howie. And he is flying to the island. We get our first song. It plays in the background as we get these helicopter shots. But it's just like, corn rigs and barley rigs and corn rigs a bunny.
Yeah.
And it's our introduction to the island. This is very beautiful. Northern Scotland, off the coast of Scotland island. Mm-hmm. And it's got, you know, all these bountiful crops and da-da-da-da-da. And
that is something that, like, they continue throughout, like, the set design, is you see a lot of, like, beautiful plants and fruits throughout. Like, so I like how they, like, made sure to, like, keep that, and it wasn't just something they were like, oh yeah, we have this great bountiful, like,
well, it plays into the story, right? Yeah. Which we'll get into. He is on the megaphone thing, and he's like yelling out to these people on the dock to send him a dinghy. He's like, I need a dinghy. And he's like Scottish. I think the actor is English, but he's putting on a Scottish accent. Yeah. So it was kind of hard for me to place like where he's from, but he's from the mainland. Yeah. And he's kind of out here investigating. And they're like, oh, this is private property. Yeah. Like, you can't come here. And he's like, well, actually, I'm with the law. And I'm here investigating a missing person. So you need to send a motherfucking...
And there's like a bunch of people there now.
Mm-hmm. All crowding around, all looking.
And they're like, okay.
Here's their dinghy. The dinghy has, like, an eyeball on it. Yeah. Which is our first kind of hint at, like, the cult, which we'll get into. But he rides to shore in the dinghy, and he addresses the men waiting on the pier, and he's like, okay, so this is my whole thing. I am an officer. I'm here investigating. I got a letter, an anonymous letter, telling me that some little girl...
First red flag.
First red flag, right? We'll get into it. But yeah, he got an anonymous letter saying that this girl named Rowan Morrison has gone missing, and that the people haven't seen her in weeks or in months or something, and what the fuck. So he, and it has her picture.
It says a year. I think he said a year.
In a year?
Okay. She's been missing for a year, allegedly.
And he has the picture, he gives it to them, and they kind of pass it around, and they're like, nope, we've never seen her. We don't know who that is.
Like, they're just quick glancing at that.
Yeah, okay. Which is a little, and they're so sus, like, definitely. Like, you can, like, the first time you watch this, you're like, oh, there's something suspicious going on here. Because, yeah, you're right. They, like, barely linger on the photo before saying, no, we don't know who this is. And we don't know anyone named Rowan, and we don't even know anyone with the last name Morrison, da-da-da-da-da. But then...
in the letter he got, it mentions her mother, Mae Morrison.
Uh-huh.
And they're all like,
her. I totally forgot.
Yes, she works
at the post office.
At the post office. Just over there.
Ross.
May. Morrison.
May. Monica.
That's right. There is a Morrison here. That's right. She doesn't come out much. But so we forget about her.
We just totally forgot. And he's like, okay.
So, red flag number 2.
Yeah. And he goes to the post office, and while he's walking, all of the people, all the little islanders are, like, peeking their head out and, like, watching him, and they all kind of, like, stop what they're doing to take a look at him. So and the first time you're watching this...
we don't get a lot of visitors.
Yeah, the first time you're watching this, you're like, oh, this is just because they're not used to people from the mainland. But then, second time...
you're like, they're keeping an eye.
The first time you hear this song, You're not gonna understand.
You're not gonna say it. The second or third time, you're like, whoa,
What is this?
This is like nothing I've ever heard before.
The lyrics are...
You're not going to get the song the first time you hear it. After the second and third time, you're going to be like, whoa, what is this? It sounds nothing like anything that's out right now. The lyrics are very...
That's very the experience of watching this movie. Yeah. So keep that in mind. There's a sweet shop, I guess, in the first level of the post office where Miss May works, right? I was like, okay. But the baked goods are not like your typical baked goods, are they? Mm-mm. It's like little pagan goddesses, and they're naked.
Yeah.
And they got like nipples and
Coochie.
Straight
Which
up.
we get a lot of nipples and coochie in this movie.
Oh yeah. Definitely don't watch this if you're like, easily offended.
If you're a prude.
And there's also hares, little like March hares, cakes. Bunnies. And he makes a comment to Mae Morrison, the owner, and says, I like your bunny rabbits. And she goes, it's hair. It's a March hare. And I thought this was interesting because, of course, he would know those as bunny rabbits because he is Catholic, as we very soon find out. In fact, he is like so Catholic. Like Catholic times a million.
Did the cut you have not have him singing at church at the beginning? Like cuts of that? Yeah.
Well, that's later maybe.
No, the beginning has cuts of him singing at church. And it starts with a prayer. I think the cut I watched was different than yours, babe.
Maybe.
Because, mine had...
Well, I think there are 3 cuts.
So I don't know which one I watched.
I actually think there are 3 cuts. So, yeah, I don't know. But I thought that was interesting, the whole March hare thing.
Yes.
Because he would know it as an Easter bunny, right? But that's because... paganism was ripped off. Like Christianity came through and like kind of just took things from the pagan traditions in order to like appease Christmas. People. Yeah, Christmas, pagan. Easter, all of it. Like, yeah. So, that's our first that's more of a subtle hint at like the religion thing, which we'll get more and more into.
And then, he starts to ask her about her daughter.
And she insists that that's not her daughter. She's like, no, my daughter's actually sitting right over there. Yeah. Myrtle. Her name's Myrtle. Her name's not Rowan.
Yeah.
And then Howie goes up and he's talking to Myrtle, the little girl.
Yeah, the mom leaves.
Yeah. And she's painting a picture of a hare. And she's like, oh, of course I know Rowan. She's just frolics in the field all day or some shit like that. Yeah. And he's like... well, what do you mean, like, you know her?
Is she
what
coming
do you mean
home
she
soon?
frolics? Is she coming home?
And she's like, no.
No, silly.
She's a hare.
She's a hare.
Just like the hair she's painting is
I guess, Rowan. Yeah. So he's like, okay. Night falls, and he goes into the tavern. And everyone immediately just stops and, like, turns. It's that horror movie, like... It's like when SpongeBob and Patrick go into that one pub in the SpongeBob movie.
Yeah.
And everyone turns and looks at them.
And they're like, hey.
Hey. How y'all doing?
Hey.
Hey. How y'all doing?
So, yeah, he's in the pub. Everyone's, like, looking at him. And then he asks the landlord if he can stay the night and have a bite to eat. And then he introduces his daughter, Willow, who is hottie. And the bar sings a whole song about her.
Yeah.
Being a slut.
And being, like, hot.
And hot. And it's like, imagine going to your dad's work and all of his coworkers just started singing about how big of a slut you were.
And, like, how you give them all boners. There was a lot of boner talk.
Yeah. Which turns Howie off. Like, he is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Which is another kind of sign we get of him.
And they're all just called the landlord's daughter. And they're all, like, singing around. And like, it's like this, like, jaunty, like, sea shanty or whatever the fuck. And he bangs really loud on the thing, and they all, like, stop and look, and they're like, what the fuck? And he's like, excuse me, I'm here investigating a missing person. Have you seen the... And then he passes the picture around.
Yeah, and everyone's like, I don't know her.
Don't know her. Don't know her. Don't know her. And then he is looking at all the pictures on the wall.
And it shows it's a girl with a harvest, like whenever the end of the summer harvest. And it would just be
she's the May Queen.
She's apparently the May Queen.
And it's every year they take a picture in the town square of a girl, their May Queen. And somehow there's a spot on the wall.
For 1973, I'm assuming?
Or whatever that year was. And it does not have a picture on it.
It's missing. And he's like, huh.
And the tavern owner is like kind of leaning up next to it.
He's like, what happened to the picture? He's like, it broke.
It got broke.
It got broke.
Okay, bitch. Sus. So the whole time you're like, that's suspicious. That's weird.
Huh.
I
mean, I get it. It's a bar, so maybe.
And Willow comes in and she serves him his dinner, which he scoffs at because it's like canned fruit.
Yeah.
And he's like, I thought this island was known for its fruit and its vegetation. What gives? And she's like, well, I suppose all the fruit has been exported already. But cheer up. Food isn't everything in life, you know. Which I thought, again, like, there's irony in that if you keep that in mind for later, okay? This movie is kind of like all those early 70s movies we talked about in Texas Chainsaw where it was just, like, foreshadowing. Like, every line of dialogue has
so important, but so good when you, like, know it.
Yeah.
It's just, it makes it so much more interesting.
And he goes out for a walk, and there's a bunch of people fucking in the field.
Oh, it's so, like, it's just, like, he just stands there, and it's just a bunch of people.
Just totally, like, out there humping and grinding. And, like, one girl, like, looks at him in slow motion. And then he turns around and he sees the cemetery.
And there's a woman fully naked with her coochie out, like, just leaning on a grave,
kind of just leaning on it, crying
and that's her husband,
cradling it.
So she's fucking him now?
Yeah. So he's like, what the hell's going on here? Like, literally...
And he is uncomfortable.
Because he is so scandalized. He is such a devout Christian. And this is when we get a flashback of him doing communion at his church. Like, he leads, like, his own church service.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting that they chose communion of all things to be, like, the representation of Catholicism in this movie.
Yeah.
Because that's the most, like, ritualistic part of Catholicism, and, like, I think. I mean, I'm not I was not raised Catholic or anything.
Yeah,
but from my observation,
it's because it's the body and blood of Christ.
Exactly.
Taking the body and blood.
So I think it's really funny that, like, he's all hoity-toity about, like, their customs, but he does rituals. You know what I mean? Like, he does weird shit.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, that's kind of tying back into what I thought this movie had a lot to say, which is about organized religion in general.
Yeah.
And then this is when Gently Johnny is.
Yes, and so this scene was in mine.
Yeah, this was in my second one I watched. And I fucking love this scene.
It's really good because
this was the scene that, like, made me, like, absolutely fall in love with this movie. Not just kind of, like it.
Yeah.
Love it. Because... well, we get him. It's our introduction to Christopher Lee's character.
Who is Lord Summerisle.
And Christopher Lee is so fucking good in this movie.
Oh, he's
an icon, and I love his voice.
He's here to bring a, like, gentleman caller.
Yeah, a very young. He looked like 15 or 16 years old. Maybe even younger than that.
I think it's supposed to be like a, like, coming of age kind of thing.
Oh yeah, he says it's a sacrifice to Aphrodite, which he calls up to Willow's window, and he calls her Aphrodite. He says, you are Aphrodite incarnate, like reincarnate or whatever. And he basically does this thing, I guess, where when a boy is of a certain age, they go up to
have sex with her,
go get fucked. Yeah, exactly, and like get deflowered, and it's really like haunting, beautiful something. Gently, Johnny, gently, Johnny.
Yeah, and it's like basically just singing about the ritual.
Yeah, about just having sex.
Yeah,
and I love this monologue that Christopher Lee gives. And I wrote it down because it's a poem, I guess. It's like a Walt Whitman poem. Mm-hmm. But he, it kind of gives, which I can't believe this is not in the theatrical cut. Like, I can't believe they cut this. Because it gives his whole character, like, how we're supposed to feel about him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he says, well, I love his voice. He's like, I think I can turn and live with animals. They are so placid and self-contained. They do not lie awake in the dark and weep for their sins. They do not make me sick discussing their duty to God. Not one of them kneels to another or to his own kind that lived thousands of years ago. Not one of them is respectable or unhappy. All over the earth. And I think that really informs his character. Like, that's basically him being like, look, I don't give a shit about religion. I don't care about these gods. I don't care about, like, these people. Which,
yeah,
we'll talk about that later when we learn more about his character.
Yeah.
But I think you don't have that scene. That character is not as strong of a character without learning his intention.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, love this scene. Love Gently Johnny. And then I love this next scene afterwards. It's the Willow song sequence. And she is just, tits out, bush out, chilling in her bed. Howie's next door in his room praying, like hands and knees, praying to God. And she starts banging on the wall, and it becomes the percussion of this song. And it becomes like this seductive, like enchanting
version I
song.
watched.
Uh-huh.
This is later in the movie.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
So weird. Why are there different versions?
Yeah. Oh, but I know it's I really like this song too. But I think this is probably to pace it out because I'm glad this song was a little bit later. Because I feel like if it followed...
Oh, yeah. I thought it was kind of loaded, right? Like that whole night, there were so many songs.
Because then for your cut, there's not a lot of songs at the end.
No.
Yeah, they kept this for later, which I think is a better cut.
Yeah.
Because the songs are more paced out then. Damn.
Yeah.
You might have to watch the version.
I want to watch that version.
I really liked it. I thought it was all very well paced and like...
Well, I'm mad because I didn't know what version I watched, and then I go online and I'm like watching YouTube videos and trying to do some research on this movie.
Yeah, because then...
And I was like, I think I watched the wrong cut.
Because then mine, I think immediately after the Oh Johnny scene, it goes to the next day when he sees the maple.
That's after Willow's song in my cut.
Okay. Well, we'll just go with, because we have your note. So then I guess, but
anyway,
Willow song's later. But we'll talk about it. I loved this song.
I fucking love this too. So she's patting on the wall, and it kind of like turns into the percussion of the song.
Oh, and then she like...
And she's, again, fully naked.
But she looks gorgeous.
Amazing. She is absolutely gorgeous. And he's praying on his hands and knees next door on the other side of the wall.
Yeah.
And she's very much addressing him in the song. Please come, say how do the things I would show to you. Very much like beckoning him. And there's a point where like in the drum section where she's like smacking her ass cheeks.
And it sounds... I mean, like, it's supposed to, like, sound like sex. And it's, like...
Yeah.
And it's, like, so well done. And, like, I just really, really...
It's fabulous.
It's
She
fun.
eats. And I was like, oh.
See, because, like, I feel like it's weird
character.
that she would have done that immediately after having sex with the one guy.
I thought that was too... I was like, damn.
Because she looked too good, too.
She looked too good. Her recharge period... I was like, wow, her recharge period
Yeah, she's like, I'm ready.
Non-existent.
So, see, I think that's why my cut just made more sense where it was.
So watch the final cut, is what we're saying.
Because mine happens before May Day.
Okay.
The night of May Day is when before May Day is when she does that. So I feel like it just makes more sense.
Yeah,
But
that makes more sense
we'll get
there.
into that.
Yeah. But, and he's like, meanwhile, he's literally like kissing the wall, like, and kissing the,
He's, like, getting
mirror.
horny.
Because he's so horny and like trying to contain himself. And he almost goes in, like, he opens the door and then he like shuts it. He's like, no, I can't do it, because he's just so Christian. And he's a virgin. He tells her the next morning, because she's like, I thought you would come up and see me sometime. Like,
I invited you over.
yeah. And he's like, I don't believe in it before marriage.
Yeah.
So she's like, okay, well, suit yourself. Weirdo, kind of.
Yeah.
But I thought it was funny because it cuts to the maypole, like a close-up shot of the maypole, and it has that boing sound effect, because it's like the maypole is a representation of like
A penis.
the penis, the male phallic symbol or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's hard
Yeah.
because she's hot.
Yeah.
Good filmmaking, I thought. Then we get the maypole song. This song is about dongs. This song is about the reproductive cycle.
Yeah.
They're like,
But it's like a festive.
there was
it's like
on
a
the
festive-
bed there was a man, and with the man there was a girl,
Yeah.
and from the boy there was a seed, and from the seed there was a boy, and like shit like that.
Yeah.
And from the
The
grave
boy-
there was a tree, and like
Yeah. From the boy there was a man, and from the man there was a grave,
boy.
and from the grave there was
Was a
a
tree.
It just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. And then like these kids are like,
it's all the little boys.
and then like weaving in and out.
The red streamer
Yeah.
and the white streamer off the maypole. Is red and white supposed to be like sperm and egg, kind of?
I don't know, maybe, probably.
I don't know. Well, simultaneously, Howie's walking past the schoolhouse and he's listening in on the lecture. All the little girls are in class.
Learning about the maypole.
Yeah, and they're learning about the maypole and what it represents. And they're like, who can tell us
And she
what
asks
the
the
maypole
girl, and
represents?
she's just like stares like blankly at her. And she's
Uh-huh.
like, "We've," and all the other girls are like, "Oh my god, I know it." And she's like, "We have gone over this. You're supposed to know this." And then she asks, and somebody's like, "The penis,
The phallic symbol,
the phallic symbol,
aka the penis.
penis."
And Howie, like, interrupts her class and is like, what the fuck, bitch? Like, why are you teaching these children about this shit?
You can't be doing this. And she's like, police don't have a say in education, honey.
Yeah. And he's
So,
like,
back
actually,
off.
they do. And I'm investigating motherfucking Rowan Morrison. Where is she? Have any of you guys heard of her? I'm going to pass her photo around. And
They're all like, "No."
no. But there's an empty desk. And he says, whose desk is that? And they say, no one's. And he opens the desk, and there's a beetle attached to a string, attached to a nail, like nailed into the wood. And the beetle is it's like wrapped loops of the string around the nail, and it keeps kind of like, it's closing in on itself, basically, getting closer to the nail. And that little girl with the black hair, she's like, it goes round and round until it gets stuck to the pole. Poor little thing. And he goes, poor little thing. Well, then why do you do it, child? And I think that the beetle represents Howie,
Yes.
and we'll talk about that later.
Yes. Yep.
He kind of bitches all these little girls out, and he bitches out the school teacher. And then he says, okay, listen, where is your attendance sheet? And she's like, you can't look at my attendance sheet. You have to have permission from, like, Lord Summerisle.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, bitch, I'm the police. And
So that's my authority.
yeah, he kind of just does whatever he wants. I think that there's, like, definitely a commentary on the police system in this movie as well.
Yeah.
Like, him just kind
He
of...
does have this kind of like pompous attitude of
Yeah.
like, and I mean, we'll talk about it, but it comes to get him in the ass of like,
does.
I can do what I want. I'm a police officer.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to do this.
whatever
I'm the
the fuck
police
I want.
officer.
And
So he
he...
very much invades on these.
Yeah,
people's
he's
privacy.
always invading. He's always, like, just butting into things that really don't, like, concern him. Yeah. And he looks at the attendance sheet.
And uh-oh.
Rowan Morrison's name is on it.
A few days ago.
Yep. And
Or I don't know, a few days ago, but he
calls-
flips through some pages and finds her name.
She's been, she was a student at one point,
Yeah.
right? So he calls
like,
them all liars.
You're all bloody liars.
Bloody liars.
Especially you.
You're the biggest liar of them all. To the
Talking
teacher.
To the teacher. Yep. Who I think is Miss Rose is her name.
Miss Rose. She takes him outside. She goes, let's just talk one-on-one. We're not in front of these kids.
Yeah.
And she gives him a little perspective on
Their
how
culture.
they handle the subject of death
Yeah.
in their culture. And she was like, I didn't want you to say anything in front of the kids because basically we believe in reincarnation, not like resurrection.
Yeah.
And the kids think that Rowan has been reincarnated as a hare, right? That's like what they've all been told.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, where is she? Like, da-da-da-da-da. And he can't kind of get over that. That's the other thing about Howie.
He's very bothered by that. He's like,
Yeah.
He's like, oh, you haven't taught these kids Christianity? You
Yeah.
don't know about Christianity? What is wrong with you? He's like so offended. And they're like,
He
dude, we're a
spends
secluded island.
more time grilling them about their religious views than getting to the root of the mystery. Like,
Yeah,
he's not a great investigator.
No.
He takes everything way too personal.
Yeah, it's like, dude, you're literally this island is so far off the coast.
Yeah.
They're not on the mainland. They're gonna have their own beliefs sometimes. Like, that's just a thing. And
Yeah,
let them
and
be.
he's totally... I mean, I find Howie a really interesting character. I don't think we're really supposed to like Howie. Like,
Yeah.
he's our main character, and ultimately we sympathize with him in the end.
Yeah.
But he does a lot of shit that annoys me. He's a huge asshole, to be honest.
Yes, I agree.
And...
The way he talks to the people.
Yeah, he's very disrespectful. Again, very invasive. And... she alludes, she won't say anything other than Rowan's body is in the churchyard, which they've kind of converted into a cemetery or whatever.
And there's even a commentary on that, because she kind of gives him, like, some attitude. It was like, oh, it's the churchyard, right? And she's like, well...
It would be called a churchyard somewhere else, right?
like, it's not
But we
what
don't
we call
use
it.
that for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's this, like, cemetery, and he goes... And I love this because you're getting like these weird rituals that these people, and it's that lady, she's holding a baby, and then in her other hand she has an egg, and she's just sitting there like chilling with this egg at this grave.
Yeah.
And he kind of looks at her like, bitch, what the fuck are you doing? And she kind of like looks at him like, bitch, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And then he like starts, because people, you know, as in many cultures, they leave offerings to the dead. They leave sacrifices. This is very common in Spanish culture. You have like Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah.
And people have left baskets of food and offerings and stuff. And he like is just so offended that he views it as like desecrating the burial ground or whatever of these people. And he like frigidly like knocks over the offering of the food, and then he takes the box that had been broken and he fastens it into a cross, and then he like sticks it on the tomb like, there, that's a proper tombstone. The girl with the egg is literally like, the fuck are you doing?
Like, what?
I like her. She's holding her egg and like minding her business. But then the grave worker shows up. And he's like, can you show me where Rowan Morrison's grave is? And he says, yeah, it's right over there. There's a tree growing from it, because that's what these people do. They plant trees at the grave of the dead bodies or whatever. And there's a piece of her navel string, apparently, tied to the tree. Girl, what was this?
I don't know.
I didn't know either. I thought maybe you would have some kind of like an explanation. I think maybe just to kind of throw him off. We'll get into it. We'll talk about that later when we talk about the intentions of the townspeople. But I think it was kind of to make him think
oh,
something.
Shit. What
Yeah.
the fuck did they do to her?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think it was. Yeah, because that one's not like really adding up in my brain. Even knowing the
I'm not
ending.
gonna lie. Navel string?
Navel string.
What the fuck's a navel string?
Girl, I don't know. But it was attached to this tree, I guess. And he's like, what the hell is that? And the guy's like, that's what it is. That's what we do. And he goes back to Mae Morrison's house. And she has put a frog in her little girl's mouth.
Yeah.
To heal her sore throat.
No, that's where I'm like, okay, now y'all are getting really weird.
Oh, y'all are crazy. And he's like, can't you hear it croaking? It's caught your sore throat. Like, I guess that's like the reasoning.
Yeah.
He's like, you people are all bloody mad. And he goes to the library where a bitch with Princess Leia buns is sitting there. And he demands.
Yes. He's like, I want the death records. And she's like, you're going to need permission
from Lord
Summerisle. And he's like, bitch, I will throw you in prison.
Prison, honey.
Prison, honey.
Prison, honey.
Prison, honey.
And so she's like, okay, damn, here, I guess you can look at the records. Like, what the fuck? And he finds no record of Rowan Morrison.
Uh-oh.
Then he goes to the apothecary, and there's like the kind of crazy science guy with glasses that works there. And he's all like, can I get the negatives from the May Queen photos? Because the one in the tavern is missing because it got broken. And he's like, or maybe you're fixing it, I guess. Do you know anything about that? And the guy is just useless. Oh, I have no idea. Da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
No, you can't. I don't know what those are. Yeah, all that shit. Then we get the fertility spell song.
Yeah.
And it's the women like, take the flame inside you, burn and burn below. And they're like leaping over the flames. They're all naked.
Yep.
They're in like there's those rocks that kind of form like a temple.
Like kind of a Stonehenge
kind of thing. And there's a fire and they're like frolicking around. And he listens to their song as he rides to Lord Summerisle's
and he is like,
mansion.
He's kind of like, he can't take his eyes off of them.
He's kind of like licking his lips and like lusting over that.
Kind of lusting over that.
And
he tries to act offended, but I think he liked it.
I think he definitely liked it. And we meet Lord Summerisle. We meet Christopher Lee. This is in the theatrical version. This is the first time we meet him. Yeah. And it's him being like, are you enjoying the festivities? How he's like, no, I absolutely am not. Y'all are fucked up.
He's like, they're naked.
They are naked.
And then he gets a good counter. He's like, well, they would have caught him. Their clothes would have easily caught fire.
Yeah, it was kind of cunty. He was like, how are they supposed to frolic over the fire with clothes on?
They easily catch flame.
And I really like this scene. This is where we get our backstory of the island.
Yeah. And we learned his grandfather was the founder of the island.
He was an agronomist or whatever the fuck that word is. A plant scientist. He was a plant doctor.
And he wanted to
came to the island, which at that point had been
barren
and taken over by, like, there were like Christian ministers that were like running it, and the people were all depressed because they were used to, this was like a Celtic, they were used to worshiping their Celtic gods, and there was no interest in the agriculture. But this guy was like, oh, there's volcanic soil that I can do experiments on, and I can probably grow some cool shit here. And so his whole idea was, I'm gonna rally the people by giving them their old gods and bringing back this old religion. Yeah. And all of this beautiful, lush vegetation is gonna grow. And they're gonna think, oh, the old gods, like, are back. Like, they helped us. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? They killed the Christian god or whatever. And so in doing that, he's taking advantage of these people and getting them to, like, get, you know, like, really gung-ho on farming and shit. Yeah. And it's a way for him to control them and to kind of keep up his estate, basically. Yeah. His mansion. Yeah. And so he raised his son to be the cult leader, and then Lord Summerisle's dad raised him to be the cult leader. Yeah. And Christopher Lee's perfect. He's so funny. He has like a cunty comeback for like everything Howie like gives at him. Yeah. And that voice, that like really deep voice. And he was just an icon. He was an icon. He We also definitely get that vibe, yeah. And this is what I was saying earlier during Gently Johnny when he gives that like sinister monologue and like the shadows like covering half his face. He definitely doesn't give a shit about the religion.
No.
He has no like
interest in it.
But
he's like, whatever.
He knows that it will rally the people. Yeah.
Like, if it's gonna make them happy, I'm not gonna like stop them.
So this is all a facade. This is all like a farce on his part.
Yeah.
And the first time I watched this movie, Stevie, I didn't get that. Like, I think not having that sinister monologue at the beginning where he like reveals his like true intentions through that poem.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if he like actually was into it and like believed in the gods or if it was all just like bullshit.
Or if he like doubted it a bit.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. But yeah,
like
makes
this
more
kind,
sense.
you know he doesn't care.
Yeah.
It's like
it's
very
made
plain,
very
like,
clearly, yeah. Which again, I don't know why they take that out, but I digress. He then says like, yeah, you can dig up Rowan's grave. Like, go ahead, basically. And so Howie goes there, he digs up the grave, and in the grave, there's not a human body. It is the body of a dead hare, bitch.
Yep. And the gravedigger just starts laughing his ass off.
Which because when you know later, we'll talk about like why that's funny later,
Yeah.
like why he starts laughing, but yeah. He goes back to Lord Summerisle's mansion, and they're singing him and like the school teacher?
Yeah, Miss Rose.
They're like chilling and like singing on the piano, and he's got his cunty little kilt on.
Yeah.
And Howie interrupts the song. He like flops the dead rabbit on the floor, and he's like, I found that in Rowan Morrison's grave. And he's basically like, what the fuck? Like, how did that get there? What's going on? And they continue to play dumb and be like, we don't know what's going on. And he's like, I thought you were supposed to be the detective, Sergeant. And it's kind of like, ooh, burn.
Yeah.
And then Howie just gets frustrated and he leaves. I love this song. They're like, fair maid, says he, your kettle's cracked. The source is plainly told. Like, he's just camping it up.
His songs are fun.
His songs are so good. That voice. He has such a good voice. Howie sneaks into the apothecary.
Yeah, and he finds last year, Rowan, there's no fucking produce.
Yeah. That's what, yeah.
And so he's like,
the Mayday Queen,
oh,
it was Rowan, and all behind her, there is no vegetables in the basket.
But she's still serving cunt.
Oh, she's, yeah.
She was still smiling. I was like, yeah. She's like, hey.
She was like,
I'm still the May Queen.
I'm still going to have this moment.
I'm still the May Queen.
I still get my picture on the wall, okay, bitch?
Moment.
And so they puts together, he's like, oh, the crops failed the year she was May Queen.
So they blame her.
So they blame her, and they're going to offer her to the gods. They're probably going to sacrifice her. He thinks that is what is going on. Then we see little kids. They're holding a doll, and they're marching together. We carry death out of the village.
And you know what? Thank you. Get it out of here. I don't want it here. I don't need it here. So you know what, kids? Good for you.
Death to none of them.
Death to none of them. I'm glad somebody's taking care of it, because I've had it up to here with death.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. I thought that was funny.
Little kid, creepy last little kid.
I was watching that. Keaton was in the room, and Keaton goes, oh, well, thank you.
It's very considerate. Howie goes to the library, and he reads about the May Day festivities. And we get some of the lore. There's a man-woman. There's a man-horse.
And then there's the fool.
And then there's Punch the Fool. And he gets to live as a king for a day. And...
because who's a bigger fool
than the king?
Than the king for a day.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you want that?
And yeah, this is when we get the official confirmation that part of their festivities include a human sacrifice to appease the gods and restore the crops. And he, at this point, is like, okay, at this point, there's really not much I can do on my own if that is what is going down. So I need to go back to the mainland and get reinforcements.
Yeah.
So he goes to the plane where he has it kind of like anchored out off the shore. Bitch, that plane is not working.
It is, and while he's in it, all the villagers pop up, and they're all wearing like animal masks.
And this was the first truly creepy moment, I think.
Oh yeah, it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
See, because so this is where my cut was different. Because after like the whole library thing, that's when we got Willow's song, because it's supposed to be the night before May Day. Because we do get a lot of people like telling him throughout this movie, like, you need to you gotta.
Oh, if you're acting like this now, you really aren't gonna like our May Day celebration.
Yeah. You might want to leave before May Day. You got to get out of here, because Willow she does her whole song trying to seduce him. He's not into it, and then the May Day morning, she's like, "Oh, like I tried to get you," and she's like, "Well, you might want to get going before May Day," and then because it's on May Day that he's like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna leave."
Right.
And so, like, that's why they're all wearing the masks, because it's now May Day.
Yeah.
And so...
those masks are creepy, too.
Yeah.
And, yeah, his plane has been fucked with, clearly. He doesn't really, like... He just kind of assumes it broke or something. He doesn't, like, see it as it got tampered with.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And he just thinks that he's invincible, basically.
Yep.
He decides to go back to the village, and this is when we get that creepy sequence of the hobby horse guy kind of like leading him on a wild goose chase throughout the town.
Because he's wearing bells that you can hear, and so he keeps like following after him.
And he leads him down into the town square area where Lord Summerisle is leading the people, kind of helping them prepare for May Day. Oh, that looks good. Oh, that'll be perfect. Yep. Oh, good job there. Like, kind of that shit. And he gives, like, a little speech, like, you know, at 3 p.m. or whenever the fuck, we're going to go out and we're going to do the May Day. So everyone
the
meet
main
up here.
Festivities.
So this is when Howie takes it on himself to do a whole ass montage where he is searching through everyone's house and, like, invading their spaces, rummaging through everyone's shit, telling little kids to, like, shut the fuck up and take their masks off and shit.
One kid pretends to be dead, falls out of a closet.
That is so fucking funny.
He walks in on a woman in her bath, and
it was the librarian with the Princess Leia buns. And she was double-clicking her mouse, and he just walked right in, and she kind of gives him a look like, oh.
And he just stares, and he's like,
sorry. And she's like, you can join if you want, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, she's like, I don't give a shit.
I can help him in a room in which there are no others. Or you can all watch. I don't give a shit. That was her.
Maybe I could help him in a room in which there are no others. Or you can all watch. I don't give a shit.
Then he goes back to the tavern to, like, take a nap, I guess.
Yes.
And he overhears Willow and her dad planning to use a quote-unquote hand of glory
to put him to sleep. They think he's asleep. He's already asleep. And they're like, oh, this will knock him out.
This is like a spell that will keep you asleep. And she's like, that'll keep him knocked out for days. And they both leave. And he, like, opens his eyes. It's a disembodied hand that has a wax on the fingertips. And then, like, they put candles on the fingertips of it. And he, like, is freaked out. He's like, oh, kind of, like, smacks it away.
And then he goes and he knocks out
Willow's dad. Yeah.
Willow's dad, the landlord, and steals his fool costume.
And if you notice, the landlord is sitting there tied up. He doesn't make any noise.
Yeah.
He doesn't really give a fuck about being
tied up,
does he?
No.
That's interesting. We get Christopher Lee with his, like, Cher wig on.
Oh,
doing, like, high kicks. This was
like,
so
dancing,
funny.
and
he's
like
a
completely
straight
Howie.
face on the whole time, like, kick.
He's, like, dancing, and he yells at Howie.
What kind of dancing is that?
He's like, he still thinks it's the landlord, so he's like, you wanted to be the fool? Prove that you deserve to be the fool.
What are you doing? Yeah. Just bitching him out. That's more like
because you know at the town meeting,
Oh, he begged. The landlord begged.
Yeah.
I want to do it. Please let me, guys. I want to do it.
All right, if you're gonna be the fool, then play the fool. I want to see those kicks higher. Whack that leg up, Paige.
Whack that leg, Paige.
Whack that leg up.
Whack that leg. Oh, with your feet.
And how he gets into it. Because the girls kind of start, like, teasing him, messing with him.
Yeah.
And he starts smacking their asses.
Smacking their booties.
Thanks. He's having a good time. And then we get this crazy scene.
I was like, their festival seems a little fun. I was like, I
was down with it.
I would
And
have
then-
dancing.
Then this shit happens. They go to that Stonehenge thing.
Yeah.
And they play the sword game.
Because
It's
he
called
read
Chop Chop.
one of the ways he read the sacrifice, because the sacrifice can happen multiple ways according to the May Day Festival. One of them is like setting on fire. One of them is chopping off their heads, because some of the characters in it are like they're the 6 horsemen, like the 6 swordsmen.
Swordsmen,
So
right,
That's
yeah.
where we get the 6 swords, and like that's symbolism, and it represents like the sun and stuff. And so they do the swords in a way where it's a sun. But then it's also a way to do an execution of like cutting off someone's head.
Yeah,
So
they arrange it in the star shape, and people, it's kind of, they form like a conga line, kind of.
And then they just go down and they just go chop, chop, chop. Are they saying chop? What did
They're
they say?
saying chop, chop. Yeah, exactly.
chop.
And it's a song, and you go down underneath, and then you pop your head up, and then you go back in.
To see if you're going to get your head, who's going to get their head chopped off.
Because it's kind of like hot potato. When the music stops, or musical chairs, right?
Musical chairs.
It's kind of like musical chairs when the music stops.
Uh-oh, you better hope you're not.
You better hope you're not the one who's standing there, because you're going to get your head chopped off.
Yeah.
But this was funny because it's a little girl and she's wearing a fake head on top of her head.
Yeah.
And so you think, oh my God, someone just died. Someone just got their head chopped off. But she like kind of pops out of the costume.
She's like, it was a costume.
It was a costume. I got you. They were like, you got me.
You got me.
The one, I think it was the librarian, Princess Leia bun bitch.
Mm-hmm.
She was crying during the chop chop because she was like, I think this is my time. You can tell, like, she was like, oh, this is how I'm gonna go. Like, there was a moment of her, like, getting ready to, like, say goodbye to this life. But she was like, oh, like, so relieved that her head didn't get chopped off.
She's like, thank God. Thank God.
Then
They're not mad at me.
Right. Then they go to the shore, and Christopher Lee offers some kegs of ale. He, like, busts them open with an axe and then spills it out into the water to the sea god.
Yeah.
As an offering. The sea goddess, I guess. And then they're like, it's time for the sacrifice to the sun god. And they present who the sacrifice is going to be.
And it's
Rowan, the little girl. And so Howie jumps up and he punches out the dude, and he's like, don't worry, little girl, I'll save you.
And I love this, because she's like, help me, I'm so scared. I don't know what to do.
I don't like it here, mister. Yeah.
Oh, get me out of here.
Here, it's this way out. And she leads him through the cave and out the other side, and bitch, Christopher Lee and all the other bitches are right there.
Willow,
and they
Miss
are
Rose,
surrounding.
And he's like, what the fuck? And then Rowan just happily goes over to them, and she's like, how'd I do?
You did perfect, yeah. She's
And so it's like, I
God.
love it because if you watch it, knowing what she does, her acting is kind of shitty.
Right.
When
But
she's like, mister, help me. But it's like,
Oh my
so
gosh.
purposeful.
Yeah.
Which is why it's amazing acting. Because
'Cause,
like, it would make
yeah.
sense that a little kid would be like, oh, I have to convince him.
I have to be convincing.
I have to be
'Cause
convincing.
As
and
we
I'm-
learn right here, this whole thing was a ruse, bitch.
It was
all planned out.
It was all planned.
Christopher Lee explains, he's like,
Since you stepped foot on this island, we've been controlling your every move.
and basically what had happened was they need a sacrifice to the sun god that is a virgin.
Ding, check.
That would come to the island on his own free will.
Which he did.
To investigate. Well, they kind of fuck with his boat. But I'm going to count it. Ding.
Ding.
Someone who is a fool because he's being tricked by all these people.
And he's also dressed like a fool.
Ding.
Ding.
and someone who is of royalty or of a high power, and he's a cop.
He's a cop.
Ding.
Ding.
So they actually...
Strike 4.
I guess. Yeah. He tells them, like, we found the perfect person to sacrifice, and that was you. We did some investigations. We sent you that letter. That's why everyone was, looking out their windows, because they're like, he's the sacrifice. That's why all the townspeople are kind of like the grave robber guy was kind of laughing sadistically, and they did that thing with the navel string or whatever.
Yeah.
Because they're just trying to convince him they killed Rowan, right? Or that they're planning to kill her.
Yeah.
But that was just to get him to do this so he could end up in this very spot where they could
kill him.
Sacrifice him.
And then he's like, he tries to just be like, okay, whatever, I'm out of here. And they like, one guy
they have
fully
him
bodies
surrounded.
him.
Well, there's all the dudes armed with swords. They're like, we'll chop your head off. Like, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And then there's that big dude, who tackles him and he just kind of overpowers him.
And then they take him.
Well, first, he's all like, he does that speech. He's all like, this is not real. Like, you people, like, your gods aren't real. This is all, for nothing, basically.
Yeah.
Like, have some sense kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is really funny. I think that it's very poignant.
Because then he's like, you have to believe in Jesus Christ. He's the
You
Savior.
have to believe in Jesus. And it's funny because you have someone who is, like, also super religious and also partakes in rituals, but you're going to have the hypocrisy to sit and tell me that my religions and my customs aren't real. Like, so it's kind of like, it's the Spider-Man meme where all the Spider-Mans are like pointing at each other. You know what I mean? Which I think that's why this has so much to say about religion is like, at the end of the day, look, I took comparative religion in college.
Yeah.
And what you basically learn at the end of that course
is all religions are the same.
Is that all religions are the same. They call it the flying spaghetti monster theory, because there was this religion that was founded upon some dude who claimed he saw a flying spaghetti monster. And like some kind of like certification board was like not going to recognize that as a real religion. And then like when they kind of called them out, well, like what constitutes a real religion, they started to realize that like that's kind of arbitrary. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like religion in itself like can be anything.
All religions are a mythology. Like why like there's old mythologies, like there's old gods, like Nordic, Greek, Egyptian,
Roman and all that shit. Yeah.
I mean Japanese, Chinese, like there's all these religions throughout all these cultures.
But
like
but it all kind of like settles down to it has to just have like something you worship, or maybe not even that. I don't know what the actual description is. But I think that's and I guess the director, who is an agnostic, he was very much trying to say that with this movie. Be like, at the end of the day, these people are making all these crazy sacrifices, but at what cost?
Yeah. It gets very good. This whole last 5 to 10 minutes is very crazy.
So scary too. Well, first Christopher Lee says, "Come, you must make your appointment with Wicker Man."
And they strip him.
They paint his nips.
They paint his nips.
Gave him little yellow paint on his nipples.
They kind of cleanse his hands. Mm-hmm. So it's probably a sacrificial prep, preparation.
Yeah. And then put him in a little robe, white nightgown kind of.
And he basically, I think it's at this point he says that don't you get your crops are
your crops are not going to be affected. It's because of bad soil or something like that.
He's it's going to fail again, and you'll have to do this again. And then he says, "Don't you realize they're going to sacrifice you, Lord Summerisle next year?"
Christopher Lee, you could tell he never really lets it up, but there's
a very he kind of thinks about it. He's like, "Oh shit, he might be right."
He's like, "Oh my god, bitch, shut the fuck up, girl."
And then he's like,
No, it's fine. It'll work. But then there's a part of him you can tell that's fuck.
Yeah, he's like,
next year, I bet he better not remember this shit.
He's like, these crops better fucking grow.
Yeah, it better grow. Which I thought that was a really good, last kind of middle finger to him from Howie.
Yeah.
And they take him to
The
Wicker Man. And this shot is set up brilliantly. You see his reaction first.
And he is
terrible. Oh, Jesus! Oh, Jesus Christ! Oh, God! And then the camera cuts back to what he's looking at, and we see the Wicker Man.
It's just this giant man made of wicker. His bodice is a cage. And then the arms and the head, like, are cages with small animals in it. Keaton was watching at this point, too, and Keaton said, what'd the duck do?
I agree.
And I was like,
what the
well,
fuck?
Keaton, it's a they're like, well, this is when this became a horror movie. Like, they're like, screw, Keaton was really funny. He was like, screw him. Like, but like, what'd the duck do?
I totally agree.
And I was like, yeah, and I think that's just the movie. They just got to give...
Ducks always have it rough in scary movies. Remember Mr. Goose in Pearl?
Well, a goose is different from a duck.
Where are you going, Mr. Goose? But yeah, so, and this scene is like really scary because you've got the dudes holding the torches. Like,
so
you know that they're gonna light his ass up in there, and he's just kind of soaking in that and being like, oh my God, this is the end.
And also something that's kind of amazing, I think it's already happened, but we'll go back to it now, because he says to him, he's like, I don't fear like death, I believe in eternal life through Jesus Christ. And Lord Summerisle says to him, he's like, well, then you should be thanking us, because we're about to give you something that doesn't happen anymore. Martyrdom.
You'll be a martyr.
He's like, you are
How
guaranteed.
about that?
He's like, you are guaranteed eternal life.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm giving you everything you wanted.
Yeah.
So you're welcome.
So you should
damn!
Which
he
is
turned that
really
around
funny.
on his...
He did.
And it's kind of also watching it, because while they start singing one of their folk songs, he starts praying and singing.
He sings "The Lord's My Shepherd,"
and you kind of get this moment of him realizing, like, "Oh, I'm gonna die," and I don't. You kind of think he starts to doubt, his religion even. And it's kind of
scary.
Like it's kind of like a really. You kind of are like,
damn.
You like kind of he kind of loses faith at the end. Like he kept it, but
because he's like,
but like also just the way he is.
I'm gonna burn to death.
Yeah, and he's like basically begging God, like, don't let hell like be real, or like don't let me experience
hell on earth.
He's like, if I'm gonna die and not get into eternal life, at least let me experience nothing.
Because it's that at the end of the day, everyone faces that question.
Yeah.
All humans think, if there's a God, why would he let shit like this happen? Like, if there's a God, why do we have all these atrocities that he allows to happen on earth? That is a huge question that I think everyone has to grasp with and, have their own answer to or whatever. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that he, in this moment, is a little shaken, and it's pretty dark, it's pretty eerie, and the Wicker Man just goes up in flames.
While the folks sing?
And they sing. And then the head of the Wicker Man snaps off, and it zooms into the background behind the Wicker Man on the sun.
Yeah.
Which the sun is setting at this point. And so it's just this bright orange, blazing sunset. And I think this is kind of like, because the director being, agnostic or whatever in his views, I think this was him just being like, and at the end of the day, they did this all for the sun god, but the sun is the sun. The sun's just chilling over there. It's this kind of like, uncaring force.
Yeah.
And nothing can save you. Nothing can help you. So good.
It's such a good movie. It's such a good movie.
I'm so glad we did it.
So fun.
Yeah.
And if you, what I love is throughout the movie, everyone is dropping lines and hints to him like, you need to leave. You might want to leave. They're all kind of warning him.
She even, especially Willow, literally tries to fuck him as a way to save him.
Yeah.
They're giving him every opportunity.
And can you believe Pussy would have saved his life?
Literally!
Pussy would have saved his life.
And
he didn't take it.
And he didn't even take it.
Yeah, it's like, because even like he goes back and questions the mom at a point, and she at one point just says,
Miss Morrison, right?
Yeah,
You'll never understand sacrifice.
Like, you don't understand the like nature of our sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like, which
being
like you don't understand that it's you.
Yeah.
Like, you're the one. Like,
Yeah.
it's such a... it's so
It's
good.
like they're all in on the joke except for
that's
him.
the thing. They're
Yeah.
all in on it.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way it would work. They all had to be in on it. It's so
Yeah.
well done. It's such a good movie.
Such a good movie. But yeah, that was The Wicker Man. So next week, I'm excited.
Barbarian.
We're doing Barbarian!
Mother!
I'm Roman. I'm a barbarian. I'm Conan. And we're going to get the potential mother. So, everyone, watch Barbarian. Brush up on your Barbarian history. Because next week...
I love
We're
Barbarian.
gonna get a
There's
little
lot of,
Barbarian.
it's crazy.
Yeah, Barbarian's
It's
so much fun.
It's a good one on a rewatch, too. It's another one that I think, like, when you rewatch, there's things you pick up on and you're like,
Yeah. And it came out in the best year for horror movies, 2022. All the fucking best horror movies came out that year.
There's so many good ones.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Let's Scream. We hope you had a fun time with us at Summerisle.
Please remember to follow the pod, like the pod, and leave a glowing review of the pod.
Yes, and you can also send us movie requests for future episodes. Please follow the pod at YouTube and Instagram at Let's Scream Pod. You can also follow me at Parker_Will_C.
And you can follow me at Stevie Nash 95 on Instagram.
Until next time, this has been
Let's Scream. Bye.